What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Impact Podcast. It's your boy, Coach A. Today, we're talking about healthy relationships or um, how to maintain and have a healthy relationship is very important. So you definitely want to stay tuned and learn about that. I got an awesome guest. She's studying, working on her master's degree to become a counselor. Not necessarily a couples counselor, it just depends, but she'll qualify for it. She'll probably be a good one if she wants to, but of course it's her choice. So just to get started, when it comes to health, we all are attentive depending on what our needs are, right? I mean, we always see people posting pictures of them working out in the gym and eating certain foods and just doing certain stuff to make sure that they remain physically healthy. And it's the same thing for mental health as well. We always have people that do take part in different activities so that their mental health is always positive, be it prayer. Some people like to pray, meditation, and forms of exercise. All these things has a positive impact on our physical and our mental well-being. But what about our relationship health, or as some people call it, healthy relationships with the people we love and the people we want to be in our lives, right? We have to, in order for those people to remain, we have to maintain some type of healthy relationship. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to get into some techniques and stuff that you should have in those relationships in order to keep them long lasting. Because we know everybody's been through a separation or two at some point. And if you haven't, just live longer. And it can be difficult, and it can be okay, because some people just, quite frankly, do not need to be in our lives. And so we recognize that. So definitely stay tuned. We got a lot of information for you. We're going to have a ball, not necessarily ball, but actually we're going to teach you some stuff that's going to help you in your relationship and maintaining. So keep it locked right here. Okay, we are back to the Impact Podcast. It's your boy Coach A, and I have the lovely Miss Jasmine Luther. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. So is the reason I got you on here is because obviously we're talking about healthy relationships, and you had a post that I saw talking about communication and the four horsemen and stuff like that. And we're going to get into that a little later, but that's one of the reasons. But I'm also pleased to know that you're actually working towards your counseling degree, working on your master's degree. So that is awesome. How is that coming along?
It's going good. I'm almost finished. I'm in my internship part of my program. So once that's done, I take the test and I'm a licensed counselor. I've also sat in a couple counseling sessions, couples, individual, group, and I really want to focus on like substance abuse and recovery, but I do know a lot about relationships as well.
Oh yeah. So in other words, you played a referee.
Yes, kind of. I
So
will
let's
say couples counseling is one of my least favorite.
oh,
But yeah, it takes
really
a lot of focus. Yeah.
a lot of focus, huh?
Yes.
So
See,
tell
it's
me,
really, hmm?
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I said it's very hard to like remain unbiased. So that's
Mm.
why it requires like a lot of focus.
That's interesting because I obviously as a counselor you're supposed to be unbiased, but
Hmm.
I've been to a session before and I was always, of course, I was right in the session, but the counselor didn't take my side.
Hmm. They have to, I mean, they literally teach us to be as neutral as possible because it's not really our choice or our decision to like impose our own values onto you guys.
Hmm.
Um, and so like we have to be like really aware of that. and just focus on what we can and can't fix.
Oh, okay. And I was just joking, by the way. I'm not always right. But
Oh,
listen,
yeah.
yeah, but I gotta get this out there. Those of you who don't know, I've known Jasmine for a long time. Yeah, yeah, I known her for a long time. She was one of my girls on my basketball team. And so let's put this picture up. Bam, there she goes. I didn't put
No!
Yeah, yeah, look at you, hair pulled back.
Ugly. No. No. So embarrassing.
Yeah, but listen, that honestly, that was one of the highlights of my life. The great, just
Mhm.
coaching you guys, traveling and stuff like this, having just the
Was
different
fun.
personalities. Because that girl that I remember, that girl was a little insecure, and stuff like that. So how did you grow out of that? If you have, I think you have.
I mean, I definitely have my moments where I'm still like, I doubt myself. I feel like everyone has doubts, but I feel like that's part of life, and we just go through it anyway. So I have times where I have anxiety or where I don't feel like 100%, but maybe the
Mhm.
next day I will feel 100%. It's just being patient with yourself and being patient with the world. Really.
Being patient with the world.
Yes.
So yeah, I remember. I don't know if you remember that time, because at that time too, you was uh, I always have to coach you, right? Because either the girls was too big or too fast, or and granted, you at that time you really, basketball was like a hobby to you. You wasn't looking
Yeah.
to go to the WNBA or anything like that.
No.
But I just remember always having to calm you down and be like, Jasmine, just get in there and just score the bucket. And you
I
remember
feel
that
like I'm
one?
having huh?
I was gonna say, you remember that one game? I think you scored about 12 points. You had a awesome game. You remember that? Don't tell me you forgot.
I remember.
Exactly.
Yeah, but yeah. I was growing up, I was more confident in things that I was good at. And like basketball, I felt like it took me a long time to become like even a little bit good, I feel like. And like I don't know, like I was more when I think about it now, I was better at like volleyball and softball and all
Mhm.
those type of sports.
Yeah,
And then I kind of just like took on basketball for some reason. I don't know, but it
maybe
was
because your
fun.
sister played.
Yeah, my sister played. My dad wanted me to play, and so I kind of just like did it. But um, yeah, I wasn't always confident.
You was a little out of your element, but you did good though. You did good, and so being in that environment help. I always tell kids, that's training that helps build confidence. Anytime you're playing a sport, of course, it always helps to be in that sport that that you love or that you feel like you're best at. So
Yeah.
relationships, are you a relationship guru?
No, I'm not. I still have my own problems, but I do a lot of research, and I sit in a couple of sessions and I learn each session. I learn each time that I do it. So, but I'm not a guru by any means, but I do think relationships are one of the most important things to work on in your life. Very difficult. Communication is very difficult. It's easy for so many things to get lost in communication, and
Mhm.
that's why it's just so important. But yeah, I learn more every time.
Yeah, so let's get into some of these essentials that we need to have when it comes to healthy relationships, because just like you said, relationships are very important and we can't go without them, even if it's
Mhm.
meeting someone at the store or people that we're building relationships with, our family and friends and stuff like that. And so like you said, sometimes communication, there's things that can get lost because of barriers,
Yeah,
like some people. Now, some of the things I tell you that's interesting about communication is that
mm,
different people communicate obviously differently. Some
yeah,
people over some people over communicate. Well, not from their perspective, but from necessarily our perspective, because sometimes if you want somebody to do something, you might be like, yo, can you take out the trash, or can you just say it simple. But certain people will relay that message differently. They'd be like, well, yo, you know what I'm saying, the trash is going to be coming at this time, and make sure you do this, and make sure you put this stuff over there. And they just like tell you all this long drawn out stuff when the main subject is your.
Micromanaging. Yeah. They're very micromanaging. Yeah.
Yeah. And then of
Um,
course, go ahead.
no, you go.
No, I was gonna say, just talking about the different barriers when it comes to communicating, through different people. Some people, obviously, you have education is different. So when you communicate between two people, if one person is a little more educated or a little more grounded as far as knowledge and stuff like that, then the communication can be a challenge as well.
And if you think there's age, there's religious backgrounds, there's socioeconomic, which is what you're talking about,
Hmm.
class. There's so many factors. We all grew up very differently. We have different backgrounds. We come from different families. Like I know one is like people in the older generation have such
Yeah.
an issue with millennials or Gen Z, and like work ethic always comes up. And so, people who grew up in different time frames, they have a different mindset than someone
Yeah.
who's younger or older, So
Yeah.
it happens because that's what they come to learn or
Hmm.
whatever. So
Yeah, that's
that's
true.
why I think some of the barriers.
And we all, and and it's not the younger generation have a specific mindset too, and that's what's challenging, is getting the mindsets together. I always tell people that that's trying to make a relationship work. you know you got to think this individual has been doing stuff a certain way for 30, 40 years, and then you have another individual that's been doing stuff for 30, 40 years, and now you're trying to come together. You try
Mhm.
to come together, and now you got to decide, well, how is this going to look? How is it going to look? Get your
And
our dance
I think it's
steps.
right. And I think it's very important to realize that it's not our goal or our job to change each other's mindset.
Hmm.
I feel like there are certain perspectives that we can have about certain things, and maybe we can change our mind about those specific things. But changing our core mindset and our core beliefs are that's much different and much harder to change.
Hmm.
And it shouldn't be like our goal. We can still have different mindsets and communicate the same thing, the same message, which is what I think a lot of people miss.
Exactly. Which brings me to the first aspect talking about is respect. Respect is
Mhm.
very important. It's essential to have it in the relationship. And you mentioned it, respecting other people's beliefs and mindset. And so I just want to read a little something that I wrote about respect. It says, listening. Part of being respectful is listening to your partner, not just waiting to speak. And trying
Yes.
to understand their perspective is a key way to show respect in your relationship. Even if you disagree, always respect your partner's choices and opinion. In a healthy
Mhm.
relationship, both partners will have mutual respect for one another. In most relationships, because you don't always see eye to eye, it doesn't mean a person needs to change their mind in order for the relationship to work.
Right.
Another way to establish respect in a relationship is to be considerate of your partner's privacy and boundaries. Talking
Yeah.
about respect.
Yeah. So, I mean, and really what that boils down to is just maybe having to compromise on something.
Mhm.
Um, because like you said, not trying to change them,
Yes.
but still valuing what they want,
Mhm.
but maybe just reaching a compromise. So meeting at a place where you guys can agree,
Right.
um, and like be happy with the agreement. But yeah, definitely have to have respect in a relationship. And I think
And
what comes with that is empathy. You have to be able
yes,
to put yourself in their shoes. So
yes, I hear that a lot from my wife.
Empathy.
Empathy, yeah. I guess it's harder for me to put myself in other people's shoes. So, but I try to just be, respectful and understanding, for everybody's opinion and stuff like that. But sometimes it's just hard for me to put myself in other people's shoes. But
Mhm.
however, back to that talking about respect, what if we're in a situation where you just can't agree? And because sometimes
Yeah.
agreements has to be made. Like if you have a choice of having kids and not having kids, right?
See,
So
yeah. Unfortunately, those are one of those core beliefs
mhm.
that people kind of neglect in the getting to know phase, and they wait
Yes.
too long in the relationship, and then they're so far into the relationship that now they're like they love each other, but they're not really matching up with their goals. So that's why it's so important in the first few years to get to know your partner, and in the first few months really get to know what it is you guys want, the goals, everything. Especially if one of the partners is very like ambitious and they want that traditional lifestyle, then someone who's not very traditional doesn't have that same mindset about life. They may not work well together. And unfortunately, that's one of those ones where it's like you can't agree to disagree because that's something
Mhm.
that's really important to them. So it could be a deciding factor of like ending a relationship.
Absolutely. And so very, very, very big point as far as the getting to know people in the beginning stages and not
Mhm.
ignoring these things because we have a
Yeah.
habit of ignoring the signs, right?
Mhm. Yep. In the
Zero.
beginning, you have the rose-colored glasses, and you don't want to like acknowledge the faults early on because you're in the honeymoon phase, and
Yeah.
so it's like you don't want to think about all the negative things, but it's not necessarily a negative thing. It's just that that's reality. It's a fact.
Mm.
Past the physical attributes of someone, and just kind of weigh it, pros and cons, if you want to stay in a relationship.
Yeah.
So
So now the next we're gonna move on to boundaries. Huh?
okay.
So let me read this. It says we all have personal boundaries on what
Mhm,
makes us feel good, comfortable, and
mhm,
what makes us safe. In a healthy relationship, you should feel 100% comfortable communicating those boundaries and know when they are being respected. If you only want
mhm,
to hang out 3 times a week, that's fine. If you want to wait before getting intimate, totally cool. If you want to keep your Monday fun nights with the fellas, it's good. Remember that you shouldn't feel nervous or scared to set personal boundaries in a relationship. And if you feel like your partner and friend is using boundaries to control you, like telling you not to hang out with friends or requiring you to share passwords, it's time to rethink the relationship.
Definitely. I think the most important thing that you mentioned there is, if the boundaries are starting to become controlling. The thing about boundaries is that people think, oh, it's my right to have this boundary, but it's also the other person's right to reject your request or reject whatever that you are requesting of them.
Mhm.
So I think that also has to be considered is that the other person has the right to reject whatever it is that you want them to do, especially if it's something that concerns them.
Yeah, I think that ties along with respect too. I think all these are going to
Mhm,
tie together because if you respect the person at a high level, then you're going to
mhm.
respect their boundaries and respect what they want.
Yeah.
And I think is
But
very
then
important.
yes, but I hear all the time from guys that, they want to control what their girlfriends are wearing and things like that. And it's just
Yeah.
like that's not a boundary. That's a rule that you are trying
Mm.
to have someone fit into.
Hmm.
So, but then it's like if their girlfriend wants to post like a really hoochie photo on Instagram or something, and they're doing something sexual or something, then it's like you kind of have to consider that too. It's like you have to be respectful to your relationship,
Yeah,
but also you don't want to be too strict on the rules and then overstep a boundary with your partner and you're becoming too controlling. So
exactly.
it just has, again, it comes down to communication and just making sure y'all are on the same page.
Yeah, and being comfortable, making sure
Mhm.
everybody's comfortable with what the decision is. So
Yeah.
definitely, so it all ties together. It all ties together. So the
Mhm.
next thing, as you'll see it tied in, we're talking about trust. And again, we're going through that. These are the essential aspects that every healthy relationship must have. So
Mhm.
respect, boundaries, and now we're going into trust. All healthy relationships require mutual and unguarded trust between partners, regardless of whether partner has experienced in the past, like a cheating ex or a person's divorce. In a healthy relationship, your partner will trust you completely. Do remember that it's like time to build. It takes time to build trust in a relationship.
Yeah, that's the key.
Taking time to build trust.
Yes, because like you mentioned, some people do get into a relationship with baggage from a pre-existing relationship, and it's very hard for them to trust. But it doesn't mean that they don't like this person. It's just that the problem is within themselves. It's not with
Right.
the other person. But if that person that they're with takes it personally, that, oh, you don't trust me 100%, then it could interfere with the relationship. So it does take time. That's something that that partner would then have to sit with their partner and say, I went through this in my past relationship. Can you allow me the space to like grow to trust you?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then, like give me time to trust you and just know that I'm working on it. And then try to see the progress that they're doing. Now, if there's no progress, then it's a concern. But yeah, it does take time to trust. So that's key.
That is key. And also I feel like trust, there's different techniques you can do and help building trust as well. That'll make it a
Mhm.
lot smoother, and they'll gain the trust a lot faster.
Yeah.
Just to name a few things, as far as, doing what you say you're going to do and being where you
Yeah.
say you're going to be, and constantly communicating.
Mhm.
Sometimes over communicating is good in that particular
Yeah.
situation, because when you're dealing with people that have, especially people that has trauma or been through some things, then you have to be a little bit more sensitive to that fact. And so, but that
Mhm.
you can build trust in anybody. That's the one thing. Is not going to be, they're not going to distrust you the whole relationship. If you
Mm-mm.
follow the steps and do what you're supposed to do, eventually that'll just be water under the bridge, and it'll be a healthy relationship. So yes,
Mhm.
trust is definitely important. What
Yes.
about support?
This
Let's
is
talk
probably
about
the most.
support.
You think respect is the most important, but I would say that support is the most important part of
Okay.
communication.
Well, we're going to hear this in just a second. Let me read this real quick. One of the biggest things about being in a healthy relationship is having a supportive partner who has your back. Whether it's sticking up for you when someone says something mean to you, or always being that rock you can rely on. In a healthy relationship, you and your partner will support each other and treat each other as equals. Your partner
Yes.
won't, say that again.
He said yes.
Yep. Your partner won't use tactics to manipulate you, control you, or put you down. They will be protective of you, but not overly possessive. They will
Yes.
encourage you to spend time with friends and family, work towards your personal goals, and have a life outside of your relationship. Supportive partners will always want the best for you, and they won't hold you back from achieving your dreams. In a healthy relationship, you'll feel like yourself and not like you have to change things or make huge sacrifices so that the relationship can thrive. Support.
Perfectly said.
So why is
That's
support the
perfect.
biggest aspect to you?
Um, that is the number one thing that I've heard that like as a chief complaint from in couples counseling is that they feel their partner is not supportive.
Wow.
And whether that is, you know, just being home on time or spending enough time together, there's just not enough quality time. There's not that level of support. They don't feel like this person's their rock. They don't feel comfortable with them. They
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like equal, like you said. They don't feel equal to them. One's better than the other. So that's number one, support. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the number one.
And so what about the aspect of support where you're pushing people to accomplish their goals or their dreams? Like obviously sometimes when you have one personality that's dominant, then the whole relationship seems to follow that dominant personality. Could be the man, could be the woman, either one. And so the other persons usually take a back seat. You know, they may have
Hmm.
dreams to finish school or to have a house or to do these things, but that stuff goes on the back seat. So
It's
is that
it's tricky because you don't want to become so supportive that their dreams become yours or
mm,
that you feel responsible or accountable for what they got going, because what happens is then criticism comes into play and we become very critical. Oh, didn't you um so say like they're studying for something, you're like, oh, I thought you had to study tonight, or I thought you did this, or when is this quiz going to get done? And it's like, that's not, it may feel like you're being supportive, but really it's like a criticism because you're
mhm,
getting on them. So it's like there's different ways to support people that are healthy, and then there are supportive ways that are unhealthy. So it's kind of like walking that line. It's difficult. Sometimes,
mhm,
like someone, your girlfriend or wife may come home and they just want to complain, about their day. And our first thing to do is like offer solutions, but that's not really being supportive. Sometimes we just want someone to listen or to hear us. We don't really want you to give us any ideas, because then it makes it seem like, oh, you think you know better. You think you know more than I know about my job. And then the defensiveness comes in. And then it's like a cycle of criticism and defensiveness, criticism, defensiveness.
mm,
So everyone has their own way that they want to be supported. And it's, again, that's something that you can communicate. Like, what would you like me to do in order for you to feel better? Or what would you like me to do when you go through periods like this? Do you want me to be supportive in my way or your way? Like, do you want me to talk back, or do you want me to just sit here and that's sometimes all we need. And I hear all the time, like, well, what if it's like something that they're doing that's really bad? Like I had some one couple say, well, what if she's on meth or
mhm,
cocaine, and you don't want me to be critical? And I'm like, you can be supportive and say, I think you should go to a treatment facility.
mhm.
And that's not being critical. It's trying to save someone's life at that point. So
Right.
it's like it's a thin line, like
Mhm.
but that's why you communicate with them to figure out what they want, like what they want you to do. And unless it's like something very concerning, this is like, just do it. Be there for them the way that they need you to be there for
Wow. And so which
them.
brings me to the next point, communication,
Mhm.
which ties it all together, being able to communicate. And you just I thought I should have sent you a memo not to go through any of the issues that I personally have. So, but you didn't already touched on a couple of them.
What do you mean?
Being supportive. Well, no, not necessarily being supportive, but not wanting to solve everything. Like my
Yeah.
wife comes home and tell me a lot, whatever she was going through for that day. And so I'm
Mhm.
like, well, you should have did this, or why you do this, or even defending the other person. She say I've always defended people a lot, like, or maybe they didn't mean it like that, or maybe they. So just it's and the reason I do
It
it because
happens.
right, the reason I do it is because I try to change her perspective on the
Yeah.
situation so that she don't have to carry it throughout the rest of the day. Sometimes if you just change your perspective on a particular incident, it no longer
Mhm.
has a negative effect on you. You don't have to carry it.
And see, and that's why, like, I have my girlfriend. She criticizes me sometimes, but but I don't get upset because I know that she's trying to help me. And people who are critical are helpers. They want to help. They're solution focused. They
Mhm.
offer solutions because they want you to feel better. But they don't understand that the emotional side, like the emotional intelligence is kind of like a little bit, it's weak a little bit. They're so
Yes.
focused on the intellectual, the
Mhm.
um physical, like the physicality, let's solve it, like let's
Right.
change your mind so you can start feeling better right away. And sometimes people feel better just by venting. They
Yeah.
just want to communicate all of their problems, and that helps release and relieve stress in their way. So it's like I do that sometimes. It's weird because counseling is like that. Sometimes people just want to come to counseling to talk. They don't want solutions. They don't want me to give them anything. They just want to talk, and that in itself is like like a stress relieving thing. So
Wow. So before we get into, communication further, have you ever read or heard about the love languages?
I've heard about it, but I did not read it.
So yeah, it's by Gary Chapman. So the love language, he says, according to the book, that he says that each individual is made up. They have one of these particular aspects or
Love languages.
languages,
Yeah.
right, is dominant in that person. Like you can have
Mhm.
a combination of two, three, or all of them, but typically an individual, one of them is most dominant.
Yeah.
Words of affirmation, quality
Physical touch.
time, physical touch, acts of service, and receiving
Mhm.
gifts.
Yeah.
So those are the aspects. He feel like if you understand, and I agree partially with that. I don't think
Yeah.
all, because I think a lot of times if you get into individual things, then it becomes a selfish. It becomes a little selfish.
Yeah.
Like, because I communicate this way, you need to communicate this way in order for me to be
Right.
happy. It takes the
Yeah.
responsibility away from the individual.
And that's kind of why it didn't resonate with me very much.
Mhm.
And I feel like there are specific and unique situations to everyone's way of communicating. So
Mhm.
I to think that there's only like one dominant way is it's not wrong, but it doesn't resonate with me. It's not something that I see
Mhm.
in my sessions. Um it's not something that I see, but it doesn't mean that it's not real or that it's not there.
Right. Oh yeah, for sure. So it's just another theory,
Theory.
right?
Yeah.
Another theory about communicating and
Yeah.
relationship health. It is important because it has worked for a lot of people. I mean, but
Right.
again, just what I get from it is that you can get wrapped up in that, into giving gifts, or
Right.
saying stuff, and even to the point where it really don't have meaning, like you're just doing this because
Right.
that this is what the person wants or this is what they need. And so it
Yeah.
has a it can also become disingenuous or along those lines.
Right.
So
Exactly.
but I do believe that knowledge is important, getting to know
Yeah.
individuals, because there is, I don't know if it falls along the love languages, but we do know that people enjoy certain things. Like, some people do enjoy gifts or going places or just stuff like that. And you have to
Mhm.
get to know that person as well. And
Yeah.
so And that's a way to continue to foster the relationship, is by doing those things as well, but not to where it's, artificial and you're just
Manipulative.
doing it just, yeah, or even manipulative. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
To get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about these four horsemen, man. We talk about communicating. I feel like it's the beginning. This is the be the if you have this going on in the relationship, is practically the beginning of the end, right? Is that the whole thing about it?
Well, okay. I don't think so, because I think a lot of relationships do have it, and
Yes, they
they're
do.
still salvageable. But yeah, they're not things that you should have or would want to have in a relationship. So Gottman's theory, it was based on, I think it's a biblical reference, the four horsemen that
Mhm.
bring doom to the world or whatever, something
Yes.
like that.
Yep.
Famine and death and blah blah blah. But the four horsemen in a relationship or communication that are detrimental to the relationship is criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, and contempt.
Mm.
Contempt being the number one thing that kills relationships. So it's not like money or affairs or whatever. It's how you guys communicate. And so how do you want to set it up? Like, do you want me to like just go down
Yeah,
the
we're gonna
list?
do one at a time,
All right, so let's
obviously.
do contempt. Contempt
Mhm.
is the number one thing that kills the relationship. It's basically what happens over time, where like resentment is built up. So say like they're just statements like you're so lazy or you're crazy.
Mhm.
Um, it's a deep rooted uh issue. And a lot of times when like you guys get like people get into petty fights, it's a deeper meaning. There's a deeper thing there that is making it happen.
Mhm.
And it may be that one person is just withholding their emotions and their feelings, and then one day they just explode over the littlest thing, like a fork in the sink or something. Like something so small sets it off. That's
Yeah.
because there's something there that's deeper, and this person might have built up resentment over time without realizing it, like subconsciously.
Mhm.
And one day it just comes out in an unrelated way. So that's contempt. Um, what do you think about contempt?
Well, I agree with you 100%. I think that a lot of us express, from what I've learned and studied, just briefly, because I want to be a better communicator, and I'm into helping other people become better communicators and relationships. So when I saw your post, it was very interesting to me and sparked me to go learn about it, and it sparked me to
Yeah.
call you, bring you on the podcast. But I feel like a lot of these things we go through so quickly that it
Yeah.
just we don't even realize it. Like
Yep.
some of the stuff that I was reading, I'm like, wow, I do that. Like,
Yes. That's what I'm
so
saying. It happens in every single relationship. It happens in every single one. And it doesn't mean that it's a bad relationship or whatever. It just means that it's something that you should work on. Like it's like French fries. Like, yeah, of course you don't want to eat French fries all the time and they're not good for you, but we all eat them. So it's like
yeah.
over time and like the amount of it is what kills relationships. Um, so the next one is criticism. And this one got a lot of results. A lot of men DM'd me about this one. Like they were
Oh, did
so
they?
upset. Yes.
They was upset. What was they saying?
They were saying, "Wow, you're stupid and you don't know that criticism is needed for a relationship. What kind of generation are we in? Oh my God, everybody's
Oh
so
yeah.
sensitive." And I'm like, "Do you guys know what criticism is? I don't know. Maybe you don't." But yeah, it's basically the definition of it is the express disapproval
Hmm.
of someone or something else based on perceived faults or mistakes. And the key word there being perceived, meaning that how we perceive it, our perspective, doesn't mean that something's wrong. It just
Right.
means that you think it's wrong. Um,
Exactly.
and that's the issue. I mean, obviously, there are things that we know are legally wrong, like if someone's doing drugs or a crime, or like morally wrong, like abusing pets or something. I don't know. And
But that's
like,
not criticism, though.
no, that would be like, I mean, technically, we
If
would be
you
passing judgment.
Well,
Hmm.
if somebody's doing something wrong and we're mentioning it, then I don't view that as criticism. Right? It would be more so passing judgment.
But the thing is, this is where it becomes like philosophy and
Yeah.
ethics and shit. What is good and what is bad? What is wrong? What is right? And so it's
Hmm.
like it's weird how we define it. And usually there's a few ways: morally right and wrong, and then there's legally right and wrong, which is
Right.
what is described by our government. So, but to think that someone does something a wrong way, like, oh, you left the dishes in there for too long, or there's socks by the door, or there's whatever,
Hmm.
it's not organized enough. That's you wanting something done a
Right.
certain way.
Hmm.
And your partner is their own person, their own individual. You're your own you are your own individual self too. And honestly, like those little things that we see, those habits, they're habitual. And so when someone forgets to do them, then the other person's kind of like critical on them. I tell you this all the time. Why can't you remember this? And it's like it's habitual. It's
Yeah.
not that it's not like they're trying to go against your wishes or that they don't care. It's just natural to them. Like you said, we do the same things for 30, 15, 40 years, whatever. And so it's
Mhm.
hard to break those habits, but it doesn't mean that you don't care about that person or what they want. It just happens naturally. And a lot of times people think, oh, well, I already told you 5 times, you should remember. It's like, no, you're stuck with me for life. You're gonna have to keep telling me. You're gonna have to keep telling me. And that's perfectly fine. That's why we have a mouth. That's why we have a tongue. That's why we have a vocal cord box, so that we can communicate and ask again and again and again. Because maybe one day we will remember, or there are a lot of days that your partner does remember to do something, but you don't even show any appreciation, or um,
Thanks.
nothing. You don't show anything for that. But the one day out of 300 days they leave their shoes by the door, then it's like the world has collapsed on itself. So it's like it's kind of like you have to pick and choose your battles, one.
Mhm.
And also just asking for what you want, instead of saying you did this. You could just say, hey, can you do this for me? Or can you do this for me, or can you pick that up, or like, in a neutral tone, which is very difficult for people.
Yeah.
um in a non-judging way, which is also very difficult.
So now you're getting into some of the what you say it was antidotes, or to help deal with criticism,
Yeah.
right? Meaning the individual not being critical of the partner, right?
Yeah, like you could ask for what you want without being critical, and I don't think people realize that. I think they think asking for things is being critical, and it's not. Criticism is like when you're saying always and never. You always do this, you never do that. Why do you always do this? It's like it always uses the word always and never, and it kind of attacks the person's character
Yeah.
rather than their behavior. So our
Mhm.
behavior and character are different. They're not who we are, but they definitely are a part of who we are, but they're not who we
Right.
are solely. Um, and yeah, so criticism is a little bit harsher. Instead, you just ask for what you want. You request things again, because if you're critical of your partner, you're kind of suggesting that you're right. You're not on equal ground anymore. You're up here and they're down here. And that just makes them feel terrible. So, and that
I-
leads to contempt.
and I feel like criticism comes from uh, your personal perspective. Like it
Hmm.
has, it's not,
Yeah.
it's not. built, is not based on any type of factuals, any type of fact, or any type of,
Mhm.
truth or anything like that. It's just your personal perception or feelings at that particular moment, which makes it criticism.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you can sit, obviously, if you want to talk about somebody about something that they're doing, or
Mhm.
correcting some things, then you have to do it at a certain time and, like you said, a certain way, the way you voice it. But otherwise, that's where you break the barrier. Because I can understand from a man perspective thinking that criticism is needed to help other people, but not in
To
that aspect.
to explain that a little bit, the reason why I think I had so many men pop in the conversation, because a lot of them kept bringing up constructive feedback, constructive
Yeah.
criticism, blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
And that's seen in a workplace, that's seen in a work environment.
Hmm.
And men are taught that, constructive criticism is good. And in certain situations, it is, like in a workplace. But in a relationship, it's not, because you're working with your heart, your emotions. And the
Right.
workplace, you're working with your mind and your hands and your skills.
Hmm.
They're paying you to do a service. So they are up here and you're here because they have power. They have the money and you need the money. So they are allowed to ask for certain things that they want and however which way they want because they're paying you, which,
Right.
I don't want them to be mean and whatever, but you know, uh that's the case sometimes. Oops, hold on. So it's the relationship, like you said, you're both on equal footing. So not one opinion or one perspective is better than the others.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
that's why criticism is bad for the relationship.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. And
Mhm.
on top of that, one of the biggest issues that we have as humans is our voicing our personal opinion, which becomes criticism as if it's facts.
Yeah.
I've noticed that we do not lack personal opinion at all, and it doesn't matter if it's factual or not. It's just how we feel about something. It just constantly flows. It's up there with eating habits and sexual desire, personal
Mhm.
opinion.
Mhm.
We just put it out there. Just look at why you think social media is so popular and is booming right now, because we're allowed to put our personal opinion out there, our
Mhm.
criticisms, our whatever, at any level.
Oh my
So
God. Yeah.
let's talk about stonewalling. To me, I from what I've read, I think stonewalling is like the beginning of the end of the relationship.
I
I
think
view
so.
it I view it as well, just go ahead and explain it, and then I'll tell you where I'm coming from, because I might be wrong. Go ahead.
Okay. So stonewalling is what happens when uh, the person has become, one of the partners in the relationship has become so overwhelmed with the criticism, contempt,
Hmm.
just the petty arguments in the relationship that they start blocking off the argument. So
Hmm.
this looks like leaving the argument mid argument, like walking out, not coming back, or like being very passive aggressive, just saying whatever to get the conversation to end, and not trying to be there for the
Hmm.
argument, which makes sense. Like if you think about it, if it's just constant arguing, bickering, you just start to shut down. You shut it all out. But what happens is nothing ever gets resolved. So these same arguments keep coming back and back and back.
Yeah, and so I feel like stonewalling is part of having a hardened heart, right? And that's the beginning. To me, that's the beginning of the end, because what happens is in our minds, they're like seeds that's planted, and then once
Mhm,
they take root, it turns into actions. And so
mhm,
once you shut a person off, like you don't care to listen to them, you don't care to communicate with them, if you don't rectify that emotion, it can multiply and grow. That's how people separate,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
You go from one moment to where everything your partner is saying, you want to hear, you want to be around them, you want to talk to them, you want to, sit
Yeah.
there and watch TV and do different stuff with them. Till now, you don't even care if they're in the house or not.
Yeah. It's
Right?
like it's like you said, like your heart hardens and you start closing
Yes.
yourself off.
Exactly. We've all been through that stage when we broke up or been upset with somebody to the
You don't
point
care.
where, yeah, we don't care. Like they could be walking past us. We don't say nothing to them. We'll stop and let them walk by like they're a stranger. And then you walk and you know what I'm saying? So
And
imagine.
just think how often that happens in relationships though. Like that
Yes.
happens a lot.
Right. And see, that's the danger, because imagine when two people start to feel like that, right? And if you know anything about the brain, that our thoughts, and they multiply. It's trying to become a habit. And so if you have two people start to do that, and then it starts to grow and get stronger and stronger, pretty soon they don't care. You get to that point where you're just roommates,
Giving
and
up.
now you just
Giving
waiting
up.
on. Exactly. But that's what that giving up looks like. So, and that's what I equate stonewalling to. Very dangerous. It just reminds me of, how even in the just talk about the Bible, it has a scripture that says, don't let the sun set on your anger. And that's part of the reason why, is because think about this. Everything grows at night. When you plant seeds, right? And everything settles at night, it begins to grow. And so your seed of being contempt, right? That seed of stonewalling, all those stuff is planted in your head. And if you sleep on that and wake up, because how many times we went to bed angry and woke up the same way? Like really? Like we're supposed to be okay now, but you still got this attitude in the morning.
Yes. And then what ends up happening is like the subject's changed and that argument is never revisited. So it's
Yeah.
just sitting there and
Yeah.
adding to the contempt, adding to the criticism, and just adding the whole time.
Exactly. And
It
then
never
you
gets
start arguing about other stuff, right?
solved. Yeah,
Not
petty
even
stuff.
yeah, petty stuff, because of this never closed that you never closed it and got back to harmony, right? So defensiveness, which I'm gonna have, which I got one more point after this. Defensiveness. Let's talk about defensiveness.
Yeah, so defensiveness, we all know what defensiveness is. It's when we cannot take accountability for our part in anything. And usually this, I've noticed, is from the more critical partner, because when you think about it, the person who's really critical on other people is 10 times more critical on themselves.
On themselves,
And
yeah.
so one little pin to that already critical person's welfare, body,
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's like it weighs 10,000 pounds because they already think about it. They already know what their faults. They already think about their faults. They already have doubts about themselves. And so if someone else is pointing it out, it just kind of fuels their anger. It fuels the hurt. And so they lash out, And defensiveness just means that they are not taking responsibility. They're not listening. And like you said, they are just looking for like a response.
Yeah. Waiting on their turn to talk.
Yeah. And I mean, it's almost understandable in a way. If you feel that you were attacked with criticism, like really bad, your first move is going to try to defend yourself or try to heal yourself, and it's very difficult. I think it's one of the more difficult ones to kind of like get out of. There's really not there's not like a real solution really for defensiveness other than just considering. You don't have to accept criticism. You don't have to accept what it is they have to say about you, but you can consider it. You can tell them that you're considering it, and that you can like take part in something that you believe you've done. So in a way, you can still consider what they have to say and then just take ownership for something. It doesn't have to be exactly what they said, but taking
Exactly.
ownership is the big key to getting through like a defensive phase.
Yeah. Another thing that helps too, and I feel like the reason why it's difficult because it's very individualized when it comes to your being confident about yourself and who you are. So
Mm-hmm.
ego, that's the biggest thing. Ego is that
Yes.
sometimes our egos are so high that that's just think if you feel the need to defend yourself is because your ego has been pricked and you want to put this
Yeah.
person in a place or you want them to understand that the
Yeah.
reason you did this was because of this and you didn't mean that. And so
Right.
we have as humans this overwhelming urge to defend ourselves, to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that people understand.
Naturally.
Yeah,
Naturally.
naturally.
It's a
Exactly.
it's a protective mechanism.
Mhm.
But also, if we were so secure in ourselves, then we wouldn't be so defensive, because
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at.
one person's word wouldn't have such a great effect.
Right. It
So,
should. Yeah. So
but
that
the
would
ego definitely gets in the way.
help for sure. For sure. So, but the next thing I added a bonus, right? To, again, we was going through the four horsemen. We talked about the communicating, which is important. We talked about criticism, contempt, and defensiveness. Stonewalling, right?
Yes.
Right. Stonewalling, contempt, criticism, defensiveness. So the bonus that I want to add is purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Purpose. I've learned that every aspect in life, and if you think about it, you can apply it. Every aspect in life has to have a purpose because when you have a destination that you're going to, it'll help your discipline. It'll help you with where you want to go. Just like the GPS, if you put a destination in the GPS, it tells you what's direction, tells you when you turn the wrong way, all these things. And so if you have a purpose for your relationship, right, then a lot of these things that we're talking about will be a lot easier because it fits your purpose. If you
Mm-hmm.
purposely want to have a healthy relationship, right, then you're going to do these things. You're going to make
Mm-hmm.
sure you have these things. But if you're just in the relationship for your own personal benefit, which a lot of people are, right? I met this girl. She's fine. She makes me feel good. She makes me look good when I'm with the fellas and all this other stuff. Let's hook up. Let's get together, right? But what's the purpose of this relationship? You see what I'm saying? And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times when you have a selfish motive, and I'm not saying that it's bad, but it can become bad. Your selfish motive just to be with this person and it doesn't have a purpose, then it makes it challenging because if they don't do the thing you want or they begin to go through have some issues, it's hard for you to deal with those things because you're not getting the pleasure or you're not getting the stuff you wanted or you got in the beginning of the relationship. So I feel like having a purpose, having a focus on your relationship, period. As a human being, we should always, everything we do should have a purpose, should have a destination that we're working towards. And I feel like that help us with our relationship. I mean, it helps us with our emotions and our discipline because we know stress comes from not knowing what to do, period. The reason we get stressed out is because we don't know what our next steps are. And the reason you don't know what your next steps are, a lot of times, is because you don't have a final destination that you're working towards and you don't have those steps to get there. And so I feel like in a relationship, that's very important to have to put that purpose to it. Like, where you heading towards,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yes. Go ahead.
So to challenge that a little bit, because
Mhm.
I'm not traditional. I know you are. I know you're a traditional man. I'm not very traditional, so I don't think of life as like getting married and having babies. And, I'm a little different and I have a little bit of a different spiritual background. But I agree that like there has to be a meaning because I don't really believe in like there has to be a final destination, because once you get to that final destination, what's next? You got married, you got kids, and then what? And like
No,
you said,
you
stress
progress. You
causes
continue to progress.
progress to what?
That's
Sometimes
between.
there doesn't. I agree with you that stress comes from uncertainty, not knowing
Mhm.
what's next. And so, like, if our goal is to have a purpose, to have a destination, we're constantly going to have to be looking for a destination. Because if we meet that destination, then we're thinking about what's next. Well,
Mhm.
so it's like, I think it's more emotionally smart to think about, like, meaning. What's the meaning of this? Or, like, what is our meaning together?
Mhm.
Because then it doesn't need to be a destination, it doesn't need to be like where we have to get, but it's more about, I think of it as more as like, what does it make us feel? Are we happy? Are we free together? Are we do we work well together? Are we compatible?
Mhm.
And I think of that more than the future, thinking about like where we're going next. But I'm also not traditional like you are, so.
Right. Well, and I don't mean, when I mean by purpose, I don't necessarily
Mhm.
mean destination. That's just the way
Mhm.
I explained it. You
Yeah.
should, your relationship should have a purpose as far as harmony. Like,
Right.
you always want harmony in your relationship. That's a meaning. That's a destination.
Right.
Like, no matter what, we want harmony in our relationship. And so
Are we
if
good
you
for each
right.
other?
And if you
Mhm.
have that agreement, then you can go back to the respect and the boundaries and the trust, because you understand that that's getting you to taking you back to making sure that you guys are, harmony. Otherwise, you can, when we get upset, what's
Mhm.
what's going to change? What changes if your partner do something wrong, legit
Mhm.
wrong, right? We as humans feel like we have the right to be upset. Yo, you just did something wrong, right?
Right.
But is that beneficial to the relationship? It's beneficial personally, because you did something wrong and I have a right to be upset, even if it's for a short amount of time or whatever.
Right.
I have the right to be upset. But at the same time, I don't think it's beneficial. It's not always beneficial. And so when you look at your relationship, as far as, like you said, having a meaning is the same thing as a purpose. Having a meaning, then it helps you deal with that a lot better. And again, it's just my personal perspective, because I
Yeah.
am a little traditional. I feel like traditional is, I'm not that traditional, but I feel like it has, a meaning. And I understand what you was talking about as far as the destination, going someplace. I don't necessarily mean that. Actually heading a
Uh-oh.
specific destination. Did we lose? Look like we might have lost Jazz. So where we at? So hopefully we'll see if we can get Jasmine back. But it was an awesome uh, conversation and learning about communicating, learning about, that the elements of having a healthy relationship, because we have relationships. We're not going to be able to live without relationships. And so nobody really gets into a relationship to fail. And so to prevent failure, you have to have these aspects in your relationship. You have to have a level of respect. You have to have boundaries in your relationship. You have to have trust. You have to have support. You have to be able to communicate. And so in communication, we broke down some critical aspects as far as the four horsemen, about being critical, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. So make sure you rewind it if you just tuned in, so you can learn all about the aspects and what you need to have in your relationship. Lastly, I mentioned was purpose or meaning. Jasmine talked about meaning. I feel it's important to have that in your relationship, as opposed to just being in the relationship for your own personal benefit. You can your relationship that you, when you're with somebody, should be going somewhere, as opposed to just back and forth seeing somebody. Whatever what that is, what that look like is going to be up to you and your partner, but it is important. And above all, harmony. Make sure you not only have a plan to bring yourself, your mind back to harmony, peace, but your relationship. Don't let these little bitty arguments or these little bitty issues take root inside your relationship. Pull them out quickly, get rid of them as quickly as you can, and move on. That's how you bring harmony. That's how you keep that relationship healthy above all things. And it's going to take a lot of patience with yourself, and it's going to take a lot of patience with your partner as well. But if you do that, guarantee your relationship will blossom and thrive. All right. So I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Until the next time, make sure you come in tomorrow. Oh, we got Jazz. I'm gonna give Jazz some final words. We got you back. That's all right.
Yeah, my phone died. My phone died on you.
Oh, it did? Okay.
Yes.
So was you on another phone?
I'm a laptop. It's not the best camera, but
okay. All right. So I was just going through the final thoughts. Give us some final thoughts. You can continue on what we were talking about, or give us some final thoughts.
What were your final thoughts? I missed them.
Well, I just went over what we talked about briefly, and some of the stuff that you mentioned about the communicating and the four horsemen, and just telling people that make sure that they foster these aspects in their relationship. Respect, boundaries, trust, support, communicating. And to always have, one of my biggest things is that always have a plan for peace and harmony in your own personal life and your relationship. Let that be your purpose, that no matter if somebody offends you or get upset or something happens, that you make peace and harmony most important, right? Because it takes a lot of forgiveness and patience to keep a relationship going.
Yes. So my final thoughts would be criticism sucks for relationships. And I know that's really difficult to understand.
That's for the men. That's for the men.
You can be critical in everything else in your life, not your relationship. I promise you it'd be so much better for you. Yeah. So criticism sucks for relationships, and to remember that you and your partner are individuals, which means they have their own thoughts. Let them be their own individual. You can be your own self as well. And don't try to change each other. That's it.
Don't try to change.
And don't what about change each other?
And play lots of basketball.
I was in
Bevan. Bevan, I wish you could see. You can't see the comments. Bevan was on here too.
I saw it. Oh my God! This is awesome.
Yeah, you did see the comments. Good. So.
I just saw them just now. That's funny.
Yeah. So again, thank you so much for coming on. I'm gonna have to bring you on again. It was a lot of fun.
Language. If you want to do body language, bring me on.
All right. You're a pro at body language?
Yes. Now that one is more of a hobby, but I love it and I research it all the time. So
okay.
I'm good at that. Desire and reigniting relationships.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right.
That's not it.
All right. Well, thanks, Jazz.
All right, Coach.
Have a great day. Bye. All right. So that's it. Again, make sure you subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tune in tomorrow. We have Dr. Jamal Graham, the surgeon. He's a young surgeon. He's only 34 years old, but he's killing it in the surgeon game. I used him for surgery twice already, and he's remarkable. So I can't wait to get in here and learn his story, how he got to be where he is. Because the average age of a surgeon is 51 years old. So it's just these young guys. These young surgeons is unheard of. So I can't wait to hear from him. So until then, make sure you guys stay tuned in tomorrow. Also Friday, I have Miss Shannon's coming. She spent about 7 years in prison. She lost her kids and all, and she was able to get released. She got her kids back, and she's doing great. We want to hear about her story, what she's been through, and how she got to where she is. So make sure you stay tuned in Thursday night and Friday night this week. All right, love you guys. Peace.